Let's bring in the A-team. Jeannie Zaino, professor of political science at Iona College, Tim Chapman, executive director of Heritage for America, and Connell McShane, anchor of After the Bell on FBN.
Welcome all.
Welcome to all of you.
Good to see you
Tim,
guys.
let's start with you first. I believe you're a first-time A-teamer here. So your thoughts as we enter the final day of the Democrats making their case and trying to poke holes in the defense case?
If this is a comparison to Nixon, where's the charge of a crime, right? Did the House actually charge him with a crime? No, they didn't. And I think what we saw when we saw Schiff on the floor the other day talking, he said he was really worried that the American people would get this wrong in 2020. That's why we have to impeach the president, because the American people can't be relied on to get it right. And that kind of, for me, showed us the entire game here. At the end of the day, this is about taking power back. They don't trust the American people to get it right. They're kind of afraid that the American people might tamper with this whole thing.
Yeah, Jeannie, what about that? Because it seemed to be a fundamental question at the heart of this trial. Adam Schiff and other Democrats saying that the American people, we can't trust the vote, and somehow undermining the upcoming election.
Yeah, I mean, that's an argument Democrats have been making, and they've been making it because they feel that, you know, if the president interferes with the election, people, you know, it's not that they don't trust the American public to vote their conscience, but that their vote may not be counted accurately. But I would just say on this issue of whether, in fact, you know, you need to have a crime or not, that is something that's long been debated. You don't need to have a crime to have an impeachment, and you don't need to have a crime to be removed from office. But the reality here, and the reason that I have been opposed to this, is because barring some change, there is going to be an acquittal. And so what you see here is a play to the Senate and House election in November versus an actual serious attempt to get a removal, because simply the numbers are not there. Even if we get to witnesses, unless, again, something else comes out, he is going to be acquitted.
Which everyone's known from the beginning, which has made this process kind of interesting to watch if you're looking at it from the point of view of outcomes. I mean, everybody keeps asking us when we do segments on Fox Business, why aren't the markets moving on this? Or why does everyone seem not to care? And I said, well, it's not they don't care, but they know how it's going to end. The end is already written. And, you know, to Jeannie's point, going into a story like this, knowing how it's going to finish is really, really, you know, something we don't do that often, but we're almost definitely doing now. And that's why, again, you're right about the debate over witnesses, kind of fascinating from that point of view, because it's not like, maybe there's one or two senators, but there's not like there's many senators looking at this and saying, well, if we allow witnesses, I may change my vote at the end. But they may be making a calculation as how does that change my political prospects for re-election if I allow witnesses?
To that point, let's hear Josh Hawley on the matter of calling witnesses or not.
You know, I don't think at this point that there's any need to go beyond the evidentiary record that the House has amassed. We have admitted that into evidence in the Senate. That includes their witness statements, all of their evidence. It's all in evidence before us. But if the Senate does elect to call witnesses and subpoena documents, I'm assembling my own list, and I think we absolutely need to subpoena and ask for Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, the whistleblower, and maybe Adam Schiff.
Where does this go next, Tim?
So what we're seeing is a very kind of delicate dance, right? The Republicans know that what they're trying to avoid is what happened in the Kavanaugh hearings. The Kavanaugh hearings, line after line after line of attack being opened up, new ones every single day. And they know that if they give an inch, the Democrats will take a mile on this. So they're trying to be very strong on holding back on witnesses. Now, I actually won't be surprised if they ultimately come to some deal on witnesses. But the reason that they're not coming to that deal right now is because they don't want that Kavanaugh debacle to happen all over.
Well, and another reason is because it's the math, basically. They need 4 Republican senators, Jeannie, to come over. And Axios had a report this morning. They talked to 10 senior staffers in the Senate in both parties. And they're saying it's not looking like Susan Collins and some of these moderates are going to support witnesses. So where does that leave us? Because Jim Jordan was on a little while ago and told us he thinks a week from today, this whole thing may be over.
A week from today, this may be over, and I think they are going to be hard-pressed to get, I agree, for Republicans over. But again, even if they do, we don't know what these people would testify to if they're even allowed to testify. There's a whole question of executive privilege. That would have to be, you know, ironed out. But I have a feeling this thing is going to be over with, and I can just tell you, very few voters out there, Iowa, New Hampshire, across the country, is this going to be something they're voting on?
Right, and probably that's a larger point in how it affects 2020, right? But I know it sounds overly overly cynical to keep going back to the point of how it affects the future political prospects of a senator. But I think it's fair now for all of us to be at least somewhat cynical to look at a process like this. So you brought up Susan Collins. So just let's use her as an example. And there are other moderate senators who could be spoken about in a similar way. If you're a senator from Maine who's a moderate and you're voting to call witnesses in an impeachment trial, but at the end of that impeachment trial, you're still going to vote to acquit the president, does that make your political future brighter? Or does voting against the witnesses, knowing you're already going to vote to acquit the president, is that a better political move? Or does it not really matter at the end of the day because all people are going to look at is the last result? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm sure that's what at least her political advisors are talking about.
I want to finish up with this piece by Kimberly Strassel in the Wall Street Journal. Schumer whiffs impeachment, she writes. The Democratic leader succeeds only in unifying the Republican caucus. She says Schumer's partisan accusations and threats have further exposed for Republicans his real goal with this trial, becoming Senate Majority Leader. Mr. Schumer knows the trial will end with acquittal, yet the senators from those states aren't stupid. They see him hijacking a serious event for naked politicking, and they resent it. What do you think?
It's spot on. I mean, we saw from the day one that this president was sworn in, we saw Democrats saying they're going to impeach the blank blank, right? And they knew that they were playing to their base from the beginning. They couldn't accept the results of the election. You know, what I'm actually afraid of here is that, you know, we all know the result of this trial, but if Democrats hold the House and the president's reelected, I actually think you could see for the first time in American history a president be impeached by the House twice. I mean, they're not going to let this go. And that's really concerning to me. And the only way to stop that is actually a full-throated rejection of these tactics at the ballot box.
To be clear, we don't know the outcome just yet because we don't know what's going to happen next when it comes to witnesses. You go back to Collins saying that she was offended by the case that Jerry Nadler made, saying that this would be a cover-up, essentially, if she did not vote or those moderate Republicans did not vote in favor of calling witnesses. But she said that that will not sway her vote one way or another, how he presented that to her.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, on this point about the Democrats, I have always said you need to win at the ballot box. This is why this isn't a good idea for Democrats. It's been a fundraising bonanza for the Trump campaign. It has, you know, energized a base. And when incumbent presidents, their bases are usually not this energized. And also, Democrats have a case to make on the campaign trail. They should be making that case and not this one because they have set themselves up for a challenge down the road.
On that point, we had Peter Doocy on a couple moments ago. Yeah. He's getting a little lonely in Des Moines. He said only Andrew Yang is there.
Well, listen, we'll all be joining him in a couple of weeks, and he'll have no room. Only Andrew Yang. That's pretty funny because the narrative going into all of this, and I don't think we all realized, maybe we just didn't think about how all-consuming this would be, was that Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg would have Iowa to themselves, and they would somehow get all of this attention. It doesn't seem like they've been able to capitalize on that. However, as you know, Iowa is such a personal campaigning state that maybe they are able to do it there, and all of us in the national media aren't noticing it. I don't know. We'll see in a couple of weeks.
Look out, Peter Doocy. We're coming to join you. We'll be there in a few days. Some reinforcements.
By the way, bring your coat because it's chilly. All right. Should we end with this? Because I know we have a fresh sound from Sheldon Whitehouse. He joined us last hour on the idea of witnesses, and very interesting. He was not opposed to Republicans then being able to call their own witnesses. Here's Sheldon Whitehouse.
We've made some suggestions to point out the kind of witnesses we want, and these are the witnesses who were directly precipient to the scheme as it was developed and implemented. I think both sides should be able to call witnesses. The White House should be able to call witnesses that it wants, and the House manager should be able to call witnesses that they want, subject to the usual rules about relevance.
We've got a minute. Let's go down the line. Witnesses or no witnesses?
I am in favor of witnesses. I don't think it changes the calculus in the end at all.
Tim?
Like I said, I'm sympathetic with them holding the line because you don't want the Kavanaugh debacle.
So you don't think there'll be witnesses?
I didn't say that. I think that they could. There could be a deal, but it's going to be a delicate deal where they have to figure out who they are.
Yeah, I agree with Tim that there's still a chance that there's a deal. Whether there should be or not, I'm probably more sympathetic to the argument that yes, there should be, because you can always, on either side, go back and say, hey, listen, at least we heard as much as we were possibly going to hear, judging by the fact that we all seem to agree that the outcome is not in question.
We'll still be watching. Special coverage starts 12:30 p.m. Eastern today. We appreciate you all coming in.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
And much more coming. At the bottom of the hour, we'll talk to the White House press secretary, Stephanie Grisham.